So for our January Bible study, we are going to be talking about Miriam. Miriam is most widely known because she was the sister of Moses. She was also a prophetess. The Bible talks about her, calls her that. One of the first times we meet Miriam is when Pharaoh has made a decree about all of the Israelite children, the sons being killed. And so Moses' mother decides that she's going to put her baby, her baby doesn't have a name at that we know of yet. She's decided that she's going to put her baby in a basket and put him in the Nile, and in hopes that she would spare his life. So the mom puts him in the Nile, and then while one of Pharaoh's daughters is bathing, because according to scripture or history, that's most likely the place that they were doing their religious routine or their sacrifices would be in the Nile. So then they saw the baby, and then maybe perhaps because they were just finished worshiping their God, Pharaoh's daughter had compassion and saw this baby, and she realized it was an Israelite's baby, and it could be because of circumcision that she realized that this was an Israelite's baby, and she decided to keep the baby. And then Miriam, not far off, decided to offer up, would you like for me to go get an Israelite woman so that they can nurse the baby? And so Pharaoh's daughter is like, yeah, that's a great idea. And it could be because Miriam was a child at this point that no one thought anything about this child, talking to Pharaoh's daughter about this kind of stuff. And so Miriam goes to get the child's mom, which is also her mom. And then her mom takes the baby back home, nurses the child. And then when the baby has been weaned, the baby is taken back to Pharaoh's daughter, and she raises the baby like it's her own. And she names the baby Moses. So what I want to talk about for this Bible study is when we see Miriam again with Moses' brother Aaron, and they are in the middle of the wilderness. The Israelites are in the middle of the wilderness. Moses at this point has already had to deal with the complaining of the people, right? And him going to the Lord on behalf of them, and them questioning his judgment, his assignment, his walk with the Lord. And now his brother and sister are doing the same. And when I was studying, it was saying that this story really echoes the scripture that says, I think it says like a prophet is without honor in his own home. So it kind of echoes that, because here it is, you would think Moses's number one supporters would be his siblings, and then they are the ones in this passage of scripture who have some concerns or have some feelings about his leadership. So Numbers 12, verse 1 through 16. So verses 1 through 2, and I'm reading from New King James Version. Then Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman who he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. So they said, has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us also? And the Lord heard it. And so verse 3 says, now the man Moses was very humble, more than all men who were on the face of the earth. And so Moses had already married, possibly been married before, or this may be Zipporah, but this was a smokescreen. They didn't really have issue with him being married to this woman. They had more issue with the fact, like, I'm called too. Aaron, you called. Miriam was like, I'm called. So what makes Moses the only one that the Lord can speak through? Why does he get to be the leader? And so studying suggests that maybe Miriam was the one who led this accusation because her name is listed first. But while it seems like on the surface that they are challenging Moses's ability to lead, they're really questioning God's appointment of Moses. So we have to be careful that when we have questions about somebody's ability, it may seem as if we're talking about that person specifically, but we could also be challenging the appointment that God has made. We could also be challenging God's wisdom. And in this case, that's what was happening. So the scripture says, and the Lord heard it. But because Miriam's name is listed first, it kind of insinuates that she's the one who perhaps instigated this issue. And so, speaking out against Moses, not sure if it was in front of the crowd or if it was just her and Aaron. But her and Aaron trying to accuse Moses of being prideful by assuming that he was the only one that the Lord could speak to lead these people. But in actuality, the same spirit of pride that they were accusing Moses of is what motivated them to speak up against Moses. And then, as we know, the Lord told Moses specifically and directly that he was going to be the one to lead the people out. And so even as believers being called, everybody's not privy to our call or what our call is, what the Lord has told us. And so this kind of gives us a heads up that there are going to be moments where our leadership is questioned or our ability to serve is going to be questioned. But like in this instance, we see, even though Miriam was a prophetess and Aaron was a high priest, just because we are spiritually gifted or the Lord uses us in a specific capacity does not mean that the capacity that he uses us in is equal to, or does it automatically come with the responsibility or the authority of leading people. Like, we have to realize that the Lord may have me serving in a specific capacity, but he may not have me serving as a leader. So I may teach Sunday school, but I may not be the Sunday school president responsible for everybody. I may serve on the praise team, but I may not be the praise and worship leader. There's a different skill set for people who are responsible for leading God's people. Verse 4 says, and suddenly the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, come out, you three, to the tabernacle of meeting. So the three came out. Then the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both went forward. So now here it says suddenly means the Lord did not delay in addressing what he had heard. And maybe Miriam and Aaron were close to Moses where they were saying this around him, so that when the Lord spoke and told them to come, that they all moved quickly. And perhaps Miriam thought, okay, see, the Lord heard us, and so now he's going to correct Moses, because that must be the only reason why the Lord is responding so quickly. It's because he hears us talking about how Moses is with the people, and so maybe, the Lord is going to correct them. It's possible that Miriam and Aaron thought that this is going to be an opportunity for the Lord to correct Moses, to prove their feelings or their thoughts that he is prideful. He is not the only one God can use. So verse 6 says, then he said, this is the Lord speaking, hear now my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak to him in a dream, not so with my servant Moses. So he's saying, normally when I speak to prophets, I come to them in a vision or in a dream, but I don't do this with Moses. With Moses, he is faithful in all my house. I speak with him face to face, even plainly and not in dark sayings. I don't come to him with words that are cloaked or words full of imagery. I speak to him plainly. I speak to Moses directly. He says, and he sees the form of the Lord. So we know that Moses never saw the face of God, but he saw the form, in the burning bush. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? The Lord is saying, I don't even deal with Moses the same way that I deal with other prophets. Why are y'all afraid to talk about Moses? Because I don't deal with him the same way. So they were, in essence, asking, what's so special about Moses? God speaks to all of us, and the Lord is answering, this is what's special about Moses. I don't treat him like all the other prophets. I come to him and I speak to him face to face. I don't speak to him with words that he has to try to interpret. I speak to him plainly, and he also has seen my form. So that's what's basically the Lord saying, that's what's special about Moses. And because y'all know that I come to him in this way, why weren't y'all afraid to speak out against him? The Lord is saying that alone should have let you know that he's set apart. The way that our relationship is should have made you almost afraid to even speak against Moses because of the relationship that he and the Lord have. And so the scripture says, they wanted to know again what was so special about Moses, and the Lord answered. And they should have been afraid to speak against Moses because their criticism was petty. First of all, it started with that he married an Ethiopian woman. And that's because he didn't take somebody a part of the Israelite village. And then their criticism moved to the fact that Moses isn't the only one that the Lord speaks to. But it quickly became apparent that their criticisms were motivated because of their own self-interest, their own need. And again, it could have been Miriam who instigated it, since the Bible lists her first as having, names her first as having a complaint. But Aaron is a high priest. He's already being used in a specific capacity. The scripture even talks about, I wrote it down somewhere where it's specifically listed that the Lord used Aaron. I think he used Aaron at least twice to speak to the people, and then he used Miriam once to also speak to the people. So it wasn't that God was not using them. He's used their gifts, but their issue was that the way the Lord was using Moses was different than the way that he was using them. And they made it that Moses must think that he is special. Who does Moses think he is? Well, really their issue should have been with the Lord. It's the Lord who has set Moses apart and called him and comes to him a specific way. So I'm going to skip down to verse 9. So the anger of the Lord was aroused against him, and he departed. And when the cloud departed from above the tabernacle, suddenly Miriam became leprous, as white as snow. Then Aaron turned around Miriam, and there she was, a leper. So the Lord was so upset, it seemed like he just stormed away. He said what he said, and it seems like he just stormed away. And his presence leaving that area, Miriam was struck with leprosy. And so with leprosy, that describes like a variety of diseases. It could be from skin cancer to psoriasis or actual leprosy. But when I was studying, I was saying, why was Miriam the only one struck with it? It could again corroborate the fact that she may have been the initial instigator. And so she got the worst of God's anger and had to reap the discord that she had sown. And what we see is an advanced case of leprosy. When leprosy gets to the point where your skin is white, that's the end. It's like this person is like dying. Their skin is literally dying. So it was an advanced case of leprosy. Her body she appeared to be rotted and decayed, right? Which reflects her heart, right? The Lord has used you before. The Lord has had you speak to the people before. You sang, you worship with your brother, and then all of a sudden, because of self-interest, because of pride, now your heart has turned. And so the Lord made your skin, her physical appearance reflect what her heart appeared to be like. Verse 11 says, so Aaron said to Moses, "Oh my Lord, please do not lay this sin on us, in which we have done foolishly, in which we have sinned." Verse 12, "Please do not let her be as one dead, whose flesh is half consumed when he comes out of his mother's womb." So Aaron, when he saw Miriam, and it's possible Miriam didn't see herself yet, and he saw her, he immediately confessed their sin on behalf of him and Miriam. He was apologizing to Moses. We should have never brought this issue up. We should never been complaining about this. We should have just kept our mouth closed. And then now he's asking Moses to please intercede on her behalf, which lets us know that they do in some way know that Moses has a special relationship with the Lord, because now you're asking Moses to intercede. Can you talk to God and ask him, please don't kill our sister? We are so sorry. Can you talk to God and ask him not to kill her? And so when I was studying, and there are some assumptions that the reason why Aaron was not stricken with leprosy is because he was a priest. And during that time, they still needed the priest to go beyond the veil. They could not go, they didn't have the right to go before the throne of grace with boldness. They needed the priest to do that. And so if Aaron had been stricken with leprosy, it would have jeopardized his position as a priest among the people. So perhaps that's why Miriam. And then also what that lets us know is that even in this, the Lord had to be careful with how he allowed judgment to happen. Because nothing, y'all know this, I'm looking at social media, reading stories, nothing jeopardizes God or discredits the work of God like pastors or preachers who fall publicly. And so even in this, the Lord had to be mindful that, you know, I'm sure there was a consequence that they were going to, that, you know, there was still a consequence that I'm sure Aaron had to undergo, but it would not have been this one, because the Lord still had to be mindful. The people were already complaining. They got a leader who talks directly to God. They were already complaining. The last thing these people needed was for their pastor, their priest, the one who goes before the Lord on their behalf, to be stricken with a disease that considers him to be unclean. So the Lord had to be mindful about that as well. Verse 13 says, so Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, please heal her. Oh God, I pray. Then the Lord said to Moses, if her father had but spit in her face, would she not be ashamed 7 days? So the Lord is saying, Moses is interceding, and the Lord is saying, at this point, she's shamed. She has leprosy. People see it, like she's shamed. So let her be shut out of the camp 7 days, and afterwards she may be received again. Verse 15, so Miriam was shut out of the camp 7 days, and the people did not journey till Miriam was brought in again. Miriam still had to go through this process of being cleansed. So back during that time, if you had a skin disease like leprosy, you had to be set apart from the people because you were considered unclean. So they made her go wherever she's supposed to go, and they kept her apart from the people, but the people did not move without her. And this is the first time Moses speaks out against, well, that's recorded, that Moses speaks out against his enemies, which his brother and his sister in this instance, is to pray for them. And I want us to catch that, like, he didn't defend himself in the beginning. Even when he was praying, you know, he could have said, Lord, I know what they just said about me. It's not the truth, but, you know, but could you please heal my sister? He immediately prayed for her. His first time, when what seems like his first opportunity to defend his honor, he decided to respond to the criticism about him in prayer. So God healed Miriam, but she still had to follow the rituals for purity, which after 7 days. And then the thing about this is, if you go to the next chapter, chapter 13, which we're not going to read, they are right at the threshold of the promised land. They are right. They're getting ready to send spies into Canaan. But because you allow jealousy, pride, and your own self-interest to, like, basically sow seeds of discord within the leadership team, that was 7 days they had to stay where they were. Only God knows what could have happened in 7 days. We know from reading on that a lot of this generation, including Miriam, did not get to see the promised land because they had been complaining so much. They worried the Lord so much, they didn't even get to see the promised land. But that tells us that sometimes, like, your rebellion against a leader, against a God-appointed leader, when the Lord has specifically, like, made it known that this is a person that I have appointed to be, you know, my voice, or to be my leader, that when we rebel against those types of leaders, that the consequences can impact the whole community. So because of Miriam's sin, the whole community had to sit where they were for 7 days. But the fact that they were just right at the brink of the promised land, you had survived all of this. It's already been 40 years. You've already gone through all these things that that you have gone through as a result of your complaining, but you're, like, right at the finish line and weren't discerning enough to know that we're almost there. And because you missed that moment of discernment, you chose to be jealous and complain instead, and then had to sit. Like, can you imagine you waiting for the Lord to deliver you, and then you had to sit at the finish line because you decided that this was the best time to complain? Like this is the best time to complain when you're almost there. So I want us to be more discerning about where we are and whatever journey the Lord has us in, so that we're not setting our own selves back. The Lord is ready to heal us and to deliver us, but we still complaining. It's like, it's kind of like, and I don't want to belittle or downplay what we're going through, but it's like, I'm gonna say like the one with the issue of blood. As long as she had it, I can't imagine that she was still. I mean, maybe this is just me, knowing that she had had it so long. I can't imagine that her complaints at year 5 are the same as year 1. At some point, I believe we should accept that this is the suffering that the Lord has for me. And so now now I'm not complaining anymore. Now I'm praying about deliverance or healing, or Lord, keep me as I'm going through this journey. Help me to be stronger, help me to be wiser, help me to be discerning. But the fact that Miriam did not, her or the priest, the prophetess, and I think that's what makes it so bad, is that Miriam was the prophetess. You're the one, the Lord, that gives foresight to. And you did not discern that we were almost there, and you chose to complain at this moment. And that same power the Lord gives us, gives to us too. We may not all have the gift of prophecy, but he does allow us to be able to discern seasons and moments and things like that, and we should ask for wisdom if we don't have that ability, so that we're not complaining at the finish line when the Lord is ready to heal or deliver, but we set ourselves back because of our own complaining or because of our own pride and our own self-interest.